Okay, this is fun, Ed. Aquashella 2021.
Oh, this is unbelievable. I love getting together with this group. It is always incredible. A bunch of like-minded people getting together, sharing their passion for nature, which is exactly how we got together 28 years ago.
28 years ago. So this is fun for me. I'm Greg Whitstock, the pond guy. This is Ed, the pond professor. And the two of us really kind of forged Aquascape, which was my hobby of turtles, fish, and frogs that I started in 1982, and then in 1991. Just started building ponds on the, in the summers off between school, and then Ed came in 1993 and joined the team. He was halfway to his degree in marine biology out in Florida, moved back to Chicago for some family situations, and then started working just as a part-time laborer back in 93, right?
Yeah, exactly. So working construction, working as an environmental chemist actually. Oh. So I left my degree in marine biology, but I'm still that I am that biology person. Degree in zoology, specialize in limnology, the study of freshwater ecosystems. And as soon as I started looking around for work, it was Ellen,
your wife,
my wife Ellen, that actually found an ad in a local newspaper, and it was about Aquascape doing a talk at a local library, because back then there wasn't huge shows like this and things like that.
Nothing.
1993, it was a talk at a local library, and I was blown away by it. And what I was blown away by, this little presentation, it was actually a slideshow presentation, not PowerPoints and stuff like that, but I was blown away by the message of working with nature to create these beautiful outdoor ecosystems. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And came and met up with you and everybody.
Well, actually, the little bit of the side story on that was I was a one-arm paper hanger back then. I mean, I was busy building ponds. And my dad was the one who gave the presentation at the library, pretty close to where you live on the south side of Chicago. And he said, oh, there's this guy that came to my presentation, and he wants a job. And I'm like, okay. And every day I would come home, and at the time my dartboard was my message board, and it would always be call Ed Ballou about a job, call Ed Ballou about a job to build ponds. And after like 6 weeks of getting these messages, and I was busy, and I was a young kid and everything else, I finally called Ed back, and they answered the phone. I said, hey, I'm looking for Ed. He goes, oh, this is his brother-in-law, Frank. Ed's on vacation in the Bahamas?
I was in the Bahamas,
Yeah, in the Bahamas. And he said, but he said if you called to call him, like, oh, my gosh, don't worry, I'm on his vacation. Tell him I'll talk to him when he gets back. And 15 minutes later, the phone rang, and, of course, it was Ed on vacation in the Bahamas calling for a job. I'm like, okay, dude. And then the very first time I met you and Alan that came with you was the 1993 Parade of Ponds, the pond tour. And I went outside, and Ed, although he's going to be talking a lot here, he was just more of an observer, and Ellen was the one that was talking and saying, hey, this would be a perfect job for Eddie. And I think he started within 2 weeks of that. And that winter I laid you off because we didn't even have the supply business back then. It was just we worked for a couple of months, and then I laid you off, and in March you came back and you never left. And now today you're the pond professor, which is probably the world's foremost guy on ecosystem ponding. We get to travel the world together, do fun things like this. Working with certified aquascape contractors. Ed does more of the large-scale projects and travels a lot and works with other influencers. We've done so many other influencers, almost too many to answer. And then Brian, I always said Ed's like my older brother because he's a couple years older than me. But Brian is like my younger brother, and he runs the Chicagoland market for the Team Aquascape. So Ed the Pond Professor on YouTube. Team Aquascape is the construction channel, and then I'm Greg Whitstock, the pond guy, which is the lifestyle channel. But this is our 28th year doing it. We're having fun. Guess who I was chatting with today on Instagram?
I could only imagine. I have no idea. You're always doing something.
A guy named Sam, who's Britney Spears' boyfriend out in L.A.
No way.
And Britney Spears wants a pond, so I'll just send that out there to go look at that project too if that comes to fruition. But
oh my God.
What I enjoy now about these shows and about my job and being able to travel and teach and train and have fun and inspire is basically getting more people into the hobby, because it's a fantastic hobby. It's fun for, the aquarium hobby is kind of water related, and a lot of people that are, coming up to our booth and, with the little fountainscapes and stuff. But what's fun for both of us is to see so many young people that are interested in this as a profession potentially, because we need more people that want to build ponds. And this is why we do all of our teaching and training that we've been doing forever. I mean, you're pretty much the top guy in the ecology, but we have the whole business side and everything else that we do. And when you have a show like this, you can expose more people to what it's like. I think that there's going to be, I think half this audience would be perfect pond builders someday.
I agree. I've had multiple discussions, hanging out here at the show, meeting a bunch of incredible young people that are just super passionate. And I remember being that person. I remember being that kid going into,
we would have loved
not
this.
To a show. Oh my God, we would have killed for this.
Yeah.
We had to go to the local pet stores, but it was the same vibe. You know, it's like you saw this little glimpse into this, incredible world.
Yeah.
You know, which led me to my degree in aquatic biology. And you know, I'm a scuba diver. I'm a snorkeler, just like you. You know, we always have these little glimpses, but to be able to design and build something from the ground up, any way you want it, anywhere in the world. I mean, the freedom and the creativity, the everything from the design, the logistics, the construction, the engineering, all these different components and disciplines that come together is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And every single job is different. Every single job
But the process
is
that we developed remains the same.
Is the same.
So whether you're doing a job in a backyard in Chicago or you're going to a $2.3 million job in Colombia, South America, the process remains same components, more bigger rocks and everything else like that. But that somebody recently asked me on my YouTube channel what my favorite project was, and it was actually the Colombia, South America job. And why don't we talk a little bit about that, because you really spearheaded that. I only got to visit it after it was done, but the man who actually found it through our TV show on Nat Geo Wild, Pond Stars.
Right, exactly. So they were huge fans of Pond Stars. So the owners spoke to them a couple times from South America, from Colombia, and I'm like, yeah, you want a pond. You know, it's going to be really expensive. They're like, yeah, we get it. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to afford it. We're building a shopping center. I'm like, yeah, you know what? It does not make sense. If you're really serious, why don't you come on up, come to Chicago, and, you know, we could sit down and talk. You could see our office, and maybe we could strike it up. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden they had tickets booked, and they show up at our doorstep. I'm like, okay. They just spent, a lot of money to get here.
Skin in the game.
So now all of a sudden it started making sense. But what I loved about it, so whenever we're designing and building a water feature, it takes getting to know the customer.
Yeah.
So we really take our time to get to know them, because we want to create incredible works of art. And I knew we were going to hit it off because he started talking about nature. He started talking about creating an environment, a shopping center that literally looked like it was split in half in the middle of the jungle.
And this was his idea, that he kind of went against the grain of his family, because he was really a nature lover, and his family's like, that's too much of an investment. That's too big of a project. It's a third world country down in Colombia, and they were not convinced that these guys from Chicago could come down there and do this. And you assembled an A-list team of contractors to go down with us, certified Aquascape contractors.
Yeah, that's key. So going against the grain, going against everybody's rules of, putting money into this place. But what he said was really interesting. He's like, I want to create something that people are going to want to go and hang out at. He's like, I want to create an environment where kids could actually see South American fish, Amazonian fish in the middle of a shopping center. He's like, I want to create something that no one else has. And I'm like, we're in. We could totally do this. They had some, kind of concepts, but like we all know, concepts, you see a blue blob on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it doesn't look like
it. And it does not look like that at all. They talked to a few architects, and they had some really formal fountains, and I'm like, so I went back to the owner. I said, hey, we don't do formal fountains. He's like, no. He's like, that's just marking
Concept.
A place.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, literally, he's like, I don't even need a drawing. He's like, we've seen your work. You guys, you're capable of pulling this off. He's like, whatever it takes. He's like, just do what you do best. And I'm like, well, I'm going to need the right team. So we started assembling the team of Artists of the Year. So these are the best of the best, the certified Aquascape contractors that have excelled at their craft. And they are voted as Artists of the Year. So we brought these gentlemen down, and women, to actually work with us side by side to create something that literally looks like you can go into the mountains of Colombia, and this is what you would see.
It comes out of the mountains. So the whole shopping plaza is designed with the mountains in the background and then a jungle. And I think it was either the second or the third year.
It was the third year.
And it was a jungle. Because of the tropical rainforest that it's in. And so basically this entire shopping mall and all of these offices are built around there. And in the pond, There's 100,000 fish.
It's thick.
A couple hundred turtles, and I'm a turtle guy. I love turtles. And this entire property that is just the centerpiece of this plaza, and people taking pictures constantly
everywhere.
And what's crazy for me, Ed, is we had to go to a third world country to keep it simple, work with Mother Nature and not against her. And that's kind of a good segue for you, is our basic approach to work with nature and not against her, the ecosystem philosophy of using the pond itself to be part of the filter system. So why don't you talk a little bit for anybody that's interested, just the whole aquascape approach is working with Mother Nature, not against her.
Yeah, I think that's key, to create something that's going to be low maintenance, and that's what we're always looking for, but also that replicates nature. You've heard me say this 1,000 times, probably 1,000,000 times, biomimicry concepts. So a lot of other people might not be familiar with that, but biomimicry is we're taking natural approaches, natural things that happen in the world, and then we reverse engineer them. So we look at an aquatic ecosystem and we see how it functions and how we could actually replicate it. So we're taking nature's time-tested strategies, proper flow rates, having riverine type systems where we have constant flow going through, delivers high water quality. We have skimmers and pre-filters to remove floating debris. So I think that's one of the big things. I come to a show like this and I'm blown away by the incredible aquariums and everything, but when you start looking at a pond, and there's a lot of aquarium builders that are going to say, I'm going to build a pond in my backyard, but they're going to fail at it because they don't employ the same concepts. So they're going to use the same concepts they use in an aquarium, but not in a pond, and I think that's where it goes bad. So when you're outdoors and you have all this material coming in, you have sunlight, you have a lot of sunlight, you have windblown material coming in, you have rainwater coming in, you have to design it accordingly, and that's where biomimicry and creating that ecosystem actually comes into play. So it all starts with that skimmer pre-filter system. We're going to recirculate the water through an Upflow biological filter, which is an incredible filtering system. We gently flow the water up through the biological media, but what I think the beauty of it is, and I remember working with you back in the day, back in the early 90s of the biofalls, is turning the filter into a waterfall.
Yep.
I think that was
a paradigm shift.
It really was.
Everybody else at the time had tried to clean dirty water, and I wanted to have clean water but beautiful ponds. So the concept was not about cleaning the dirty water. The concept was about building a beautiful water feature, and that was where making the waterfall unit your biological filter to make the whole thing look natural instead of pumping it into big drums or something on the side.
Right.
Make it all fit together, because I don't care how clear your water is, if you got a big tub sitting next to it, it kind of takes away from the beauty of it.
I completely agree.
So the whole 20 product and 20 step ecosystem approach that we developed together, working with Mother Nature, not against her, you doing your science thing, me doing the marketing and the business side, I think it's been a good marriage over the years. And what's fun for us now, Ed, is at a show like this, just on Friday night, last time I saw you till today, we had all the influencers over at Aqualand,
right?
Kind of getting together. And do you remember who the very first influencer that we worked with was?
Is it Brian Barczyk?
Yes. So I brought Eddie to Detroit. We went to the Reptorium, which is Brian Barczyk, a couple million subscribers, Snake Bites TV, and we ended up building it for RJ.
Yep.
And so this was amazing because he had probably a 400 or 500 gallon blue stock tank that RJ was in, and it was this 3-legged alligator that he had, and every single week he would have to take the water, dump it, add new water, and it was it was a blue tub. Well, we built in one day an ecosystem pond for RJ, and I was just there. Geez, it's August right now. I was just there in June and saw RJ, and I said, well, how often have you cleaned this thing? And he goes, I haven't done anything in 4 years. 4 years is just run with an
insane
200-pound alligator, living in this and eating, and it's because the ecosystem, and he doesn't take the waste out. It just breaks down in the bacteria, in the biofalls, in the gravel, where the substrate, breaking things down, and it's such an alien concept for a lot of traditional koi ponds that try to take the waste, put it out. You need to be back flushing the filters, you need to removing everything, versus organically letting it break down in the system.
Yeah, and you know what? You kind of, something that kind of stuck out in that conversation you were just talking about, RJ, incredible animal, living in just a tub or a tank. We've seen this. This is common in zoos around the world, where they have this system where they're going to keep water in it only for a couple days. They completely drain it, they disrupt the ecosystem, and then they fill it back up with water.
Yep.
So we are completely breaking those rules, and actually we have done that in zoos around the world.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where we're coming in and we're starting to shift these systems into an ecosystem concept, and literally we have that same story. We're simplifying everything, and now the zookeepers could actually focus on the animal component of it instead of just cleaning out tanks all the time. Instead of backflushing filters, they're actually able to focus on the animals because now we've given them more time. It's cut back on their maintenance.
Well,
and
actually,
it's that same philosophy. It works across all channels.
So you were saying how when we've done probably 5 or 6 projects at the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is one of the oldest zoos in the
probably
country.
Probably got a dozen over there,
yeah. Even more. It's crazy. But you said when we were, I forget which exhibit it was that we did, it was the only time that they ever had a contractor that hit all the different areas. What was it again? It was
it was engineering, the maintenance staff, and then the zookeepers themselves who were in charge of the animals. Everybody agreed on it that this was the best way to take care of these animals and free up everybody's time.
And they had said they
was
never
cost
had
effective.
it. They never had some vendor come in, and then it was the zookeepers were happy, the maintenance people were happy, the finance people were happy, and it's basically our philosophy of keep it simple, stupid, and work with Mother Nature.
Exactly.
So Brian Barczyk, I think, was 5 years ago. I was thinking about this.
May have been.
And it was the same summer that we also did for Dustin's fish tanks.
Oh, right.
Wonderland.
Yes,
so
yes,
we built his down there.
Yep.
And then that was kind of the beginning. We didn't even have a YouTube channel back then. But that was like, okay, our TV show, Pond Stars on Nat Geo Wild, had ended. It was kind of an in-between time. Started building some ponds just to work with some other influencers. They couldn't even give us a shout out because we didn't have any channels. And then kind of the big one happened where a little bit like Britney Spears a little bit. The Wonder Kid, Logan Paul, bought a house in Encino, California, and posted, I think it was on Vine, that he wanted a koi pond just like he grew up in Ohio, and my phone blew up, and I kind of knew of Logan Paul, but I had never, I didn't follow him, and all of a sudden I had a dozen people saying, you got to build a pond for Logan Paul, you got to build a pond for Logan Paul, and within 48 hours of him posting, I was in Encino, California in his backyard designing a pond. Within 6 weeks after that, in December of 18, we were out there building them a pond.
I remember it well. That was an unbelievable experience. Again, bringing in certified contractors from around North America that wanted to be a part of it. And, he's an awesome guy. I love working for Logan. Actually, I even got him to eat a grub.
Yeah, you did. You got him to eat a grub. I think that was December of 2017.
Yes.
And that's when I decided to start my YouTube channel. And at the time, I didn't even know what I was going to do besides just about ponds. And I have evolved into just basically showcasing how people live the aquascape lifestyle. And then it's been about a year and a half for your channel?
It has, a year and a half for the Pond Professor channel. I was always part of the Team Aquascape. We're both still part of Team Aquascape, just because that's the main channel. That's what everybody focuses on when they think about with Aquascape. But the Pond Professor channel, we kind of split off a little bit because I was getting requests and people asking for more detailed information, more in-depth type stuff of the biology, the biomimicry, the engineering, and all these different things. And we weren't able to pull it off with Team Aquascape because we have so many projects that are happening. So it's like, in order to do it, we just had to start splitting up so we could hit all these different medias to appease the everybody's different levels of understanding.
Well, and speaking of so many different things going on and so many projects, one of the guys that came by the booth, and got a shirt and everything else, which was fun. He was like, "Man, you've been on like everybody's channels," and we were talking. What do you think some of the channels that people here watch a lot?
Oh, I'm going to say probably George.
Of course. Well, you have been on George's even. I took George to Japan, so Coral 12G. I took him to Japan with his lovely mom, and we had a great time picking out koi out there. But then after that, you put in. Well, we put in the outdoor pond first, and then you really pulled off the indoor pond. And how long? I mean, that was amazing. that project because you kind of just had to figure out how to get it done, and you had to do it while his mom and dad were in Florida. So talk a little bit about that, because and his dad came home. Oh my gosh,
he's still pretty mad at me. I think he's still mad at me.
That's classic George. But that was a pretty cool. What about 1,500 gallons?
2,300 gallon tank in his basement, totally custom tank system, using our Aquascape ecosystem, a skimmer filter, biofalls. But what was unique, obviously, about it is we put in 2 massive glass panels, so you could actually see into that underwater world.
The company that manufactured the panels is out of Wisconsin.
And you're going to be getting your new tank made from them.
I bought the People's Choice Flower Horn winner for Aqualand, so come by and visit Aqualand and see the People's Choice Flower Horn winner. We're going to get a nice octagon tank, but they just told me something that I don't even know if you heard. Because they have a booth over here.
I talked to them.
Okay, they said that George only told them 1 panel.
Oh yes, and we needed 2.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah, we needed 2, and all of a sudden 1 shows up, and George is like, "We needed a second one," and they're like, "It's going to take us like a couple weeks," and George is like, "I need it by Tuesday."
Oh my gosh.
And they were like, "All right, we'll figure it out." So we sent one of Georgia, an intern, to go pick it up.
Yeah.
And he was just gone for like a day and a half, and all of a sudden he comes back with this other big giant glass panel.
Half the work.
Oh my gosh. Unreal.
So obviously everybody here knows George and Coral 12G, but another one that we did a while ago together, Bama Bass.
Oh, yeah.
Down in Alabama.
Yeah.
And we built him a beautiful ecosystem pond for, he's a fisherman.
Yep.
And then I think, are we going to do anything with his big lake
big
pond?
lake. I reached out to Steven after he started building the pond. We are talking about doing a big waterfall and a stream for that system.
Okay. So that'll be fun.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be incredible. It'd be awesome.
Yep. And then the other guy that a lot of people have been coming by the booth and saying, "Oh, you got to work with," was Andrew Flair Fishing.
Oh, Flair Fishing.
Out in Nebraska.
In Iowa. He lives just over the border.
Iowa, Nebraska.
In Iowa. Well, you can't miss Big Rich. I can see him. You can see him everywhere. But yeah, a lot of people have seen that.
He's just such a lovable guy. But boy, I saw Big Rich on. I found him on YouTube. He had like 6 million views on a tour of his property, and he had mentioned that he was putting a couple of goldfish in his indoor swimming pool and wasn't adding chlorine, and Tracy, his wife, didn't notice. And he said, "But I got to figure out a way to filter it." And I go, "I know exactly who to get to filter this." And so that's when, I think, was the first time that you went out there when we actually did it?
It was, yep.
So you did everything on the phone?
Everything over the phone and, with a piece of paper and pencil. That's it.
So, and that pond has been crystal clear. That swimming pool pond has been crystal clear. So why don't you explain what you did there at Big Rich's at Ohio Fish Rescue?
So Big Rich's, massive, huge indoor swimming pool. And he wanted to turn it into this monster fish pond, for all types of arapaima, arowanas, and red-tailed catfish, and shoveling those cats and all types of crazy animals. So we had to create a filtering system literally in the bottom of the pool, because we had no place to do it on the outside perimeter. So this was a first for me. So thankfully the pool was 12 feet deep. We were able to take the deep area. So what we did was we took this a 6-foot deep section of the 12-foot area, and we turned it into an Upflow biological filter. It has a huge sedimentation chamber. We have, I don't even know how many truckloads of river rock for the wetland filtration system, but it is spotless, and actually so much so that Rich has now bypassed all of his filters, and they go through that massive tank. So every feature in his facility goes through this wetland filter. And you and I have both snorkeled in it, and it is pristine. It's pristine water.
What a fun project. And then, of course, I don't think you were there. I went and built the front pond.
I was not there.
But you went and built to help them in the back pond, right?
On the koi pond, correct.
Okay, so I built the front pond for Tracy because she wanted a place to put her koi.
Yep.
And then they ended up getting stolen out there, so they only put goldfish mostly up there now. And then they built a massive pond. This is really funny. This is classic Ohio Fish Rescue. And explain what happened, because I donated a liner and a wetland filter.
Right.
But then he made it, this is classic Rich. This is pretty funny. And then what did he say?
So you donated all the materials for a wetland filter and all the liner and materials to build a pond that was about 400 square feet.
Yeah.
For koi, 400 or 500 square feet. So then all of a sudden, Rich calls up and he's like, "Hey, I was able to get this liner on wholesale." He's like, "Instead of having it between 400 and 500 square feet, I want to have it to be 2,000 square feet." And I'm like, "A 2,000 square foot pond?" I'm like, "We already shipped all the filtering stuff." I'm like, "It's not going to handle it." He's like, "Oh, it'll be fine." I'm like, "No, it's not going to be fine." I'm like, "We're going to have to amend this." So we put it in. It works, but we're going to need to add another filtration system on it. So that, again, that's just
another upcoming project.
That's Rich and Josh, kind of going crazy with it. You give him a little bit, and all of a sudden he's running with it. It's nuts.
So then the other guy, have you seen Blake's Exotic Animal Ranch since you got here today?
I've talked to Blake, yeah.
Yeah, well, you saw him Friday night at the party.
Correct.
So I think he's coming today. But talk about
the project.
Spoke with
him.
Yeah,
yep.
Talk about the project that we are going to be doing at Aquascape.
Yep.
Last week of January next year at Blake's Exotic Animal Ranch down in Fort
So
Lauderdale.
we are going to be doing a really, really cool feature. Actually, I'm going back with Blake tomorrow morning to Florida, and we're going to design that. But it's going to be an incredible feature for Oliver, his Asian small-clawed otter. So this is going to be an incredible feature. Otters are one of my favorite animals. They're just incredibly smart, very social animals, and we want to do a hybrid type system, Aquascape ecosystem, but he wants viewing panels like we did for George.
Yep.
So I am already working on some different things where we could have a precast glass panel going down there. So I actually spoke with Mark from the tent company about getting the glass panels and everything set up. But we're going to do this really cool interactive feature for Oliver, which is just going to be over the top.
So that's going to be the last week of January, and that's going to be the fourth job we've done at Blake's Exotic Animal Ranch.
It'll be the fourth job, correct?
Yeah. So you built. That was a very unique project that you did for him.
Yeah.
Because you didn't use a liner, you used underlayment. So explain what you did there for his capybaras.
Yeah. So Blake's Exotic Animal Ranch down in South Florida, he has this natural wetland area where he had groundwater basically, and it was mud. So he had all types of plecostomus in there, and which was really the only thing that was going to survive. He's got capybaras in there, but it was really rough. You literally couldn't see 2 inches down in the water. So he's like, "Hey, could you fix this?" I said, "I could fix it, of course, but we're going to need to do some really unique engineering." So what I want to do, because the groundwater in Florida is very high, I don't want to put in a rubber liner because it's going to cause a problem.
Bubble up.
It'll bubble up. We're going to put in an impermeable barrier, and we can't break that water cycle. So I brought in a heavy-duty geotextile fabric. Water can flow through it, but it's going to create a barrier with the subsoil. So now we have a barrier, so if the capybaras, he's got all types of turtles in there as well, they won't be able to burrow down into the mud. So then what I did was I put a pre-filter on, so a customized skimmer system, and then a large wetland filter. We built all of this using native coral stone from right down the road, actually, and it is phenomenal. The water is pristine. The cappies love it. Actually, Oliver goes in it all the time. His wood turtles are breeding like mad.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes,
Cool.
wood turtles are breeding like crazy. He's got a dozen different species of unique Amazonian birds that he's going to be bringing,
he's
South
building an
American
aviary.
birds.
He said he's
Whole
almost
aviary.
done with the aviary, so
He's
you'll probably see it when you go
he's
down
real,
there.
real close to being
Yeah.
done with it.
So, and then the last project we were on together for a collaboration was, remember which one?
The last one that we just did
A month ago.
with Coyote Peterson.
No, okay.
Yeah.
That was a couple months ago. No, the last one that we'll talk about that in a second because that was at a nature. Well, just talk about that, then I'll remind you. If you don't remember, I'll remind you. We do a lot of projects together.
Well, then we got Tanner Serpa. I could see Brett Raymer sitting over on the side from ATM.
Yeah, just had
we
lunch
got
with them.
everybody.
But the last
gets a
project that you and I were together was the Diamondback Terrapin build.
Oh, geez. Yes.
So talk a little bit about Garden State Tortoise, our friends down there.
Yep.
The good work that they're doing outside of Atlantic City with basically rehabbing Diamondback
Terrapins, really amazing facility. Just getting to know them, their passion for saving these really unique animals. What I love about it, the Diamondback Terrapin, is that only species of turtle that kind of is in that intermediary section.
Brackish.
So it's brackish water. So it's gonna, so it's really learned how to, it evolved in that area, feeding on mussels and clams and crustaceans and things like that. They are omnivorous, but that's a really unique habitat. So what we did was we created a tidal flow system where the water will actually fluctuate up and down to mimic the tides that they're normally found in. Super, super cool. And again, that goes back to biomimicry. If we could replicate the habitat where they're normally found, they're going to be happy. And when those animals are happy, that's when they're going to start to breed. When they start to breed and they're in better shape, we know we've done our job right.
So that was just one of the many. I mean, my entire business started because of my hobby for turtles. And so it's fun for me to be able to give back now that we have all of these materials that are used. You know, Chris Leone, the kind of the founder of Garden St. George, couldn't believe how fast we did it because he had ponds that he built. He's a turtle and snake guy, but he's not a professional pond builder. We did in 2 days what would take him years.
Oh, years, literally, years. But again, it's all relevant. I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah.
So we know the process. So we're not spending time guessing. We're tweaking stuff. We're always tweaking things, but we know what it's going to take to pull this thing off. So now it's just a matter of fine-tuning the design, assembling the right team,
Yep.
and then making it happen.
Speaking of turtles, who do you think I'm going to talk about next?
Maybe Kennan, maybe Camp Kennan, or Iguanaland. What about Iguanaland? I don't know.
Greg's Turtle Haven.
Greg's Turtle Haven. Yes, Greg Brashear, of course.
So we went down there. Was that last? That was last year.
Last October.
Yeah, last
Correct.
fall. Almost coming up on a year. And so I met Greg online. He's really big into alligator snapping turtles and all turtles in general, and reached out to him. And I really just wanted to go hunting turtles with him. And so we went down to that.
That was awesome.
But we stopped by his house, and we kind of course, is what we do. We designed an ultimate turtle pond for him, and then you did another regional event down outside of Atlanta, Georgia, last October, and you did Greg's Turtle Haven, which he's got so many different turtles that go in there. Yep. It's just a terrific project that he's got, because this guy's just like me. He's got a heart for turtles.
Oh, and it is. I actually was texting Greg literally a week ago. I think it was last Sunday. We were kind of going back and forth on a few things. He had a couple questions, but that pond looks phenomenal. And again, he sent me some updated pictures, and he has done an incredible job just kind of planting up everything around it. But we literally replicated that habitat that he looks at on a daily basis. You know, so he spends his time going through the rivers of North Georgia, and we built him his own North Georgia river system.
It's pretty awesome.
It is insane. It is awesome. We got some really cool pieces of driftwood and logs and stumps, because that's where these animals are. They're going to tuck themselves underneath logs and stuff like that. So we created some really, really cool stuff.
Oh, we got some questions here. Okay. What's the largest pond you guys have built? Is there a limit to the size you're comfortable with? So the largest pond that you've personally built is in Columbia South. Well, it's actually Aqualand.
The largest one is going to be Esplanade. We have that's over 2 acres of water.
All right, so here's what I want to.
Huge.
This is actually a good one that this prompts. This is kind of.
And then
nice.
what about Woodford and?
Well, yeah. So that's the biggest. That's the biggest aquascape pond in the world.
Complete aquascape
down in
ecosystem.
Australia that we've had the pleasure. Patrick Handley, Aquascapes of Australia. Put in maybe about 3 years ago now.
Yes,
I'm thinking. Yep. And what's the size of that? It's a couple of acres.
It's a little over 2 acres.
Wow, 2 acres.
So 80,000 square feet.
17 feet deep, and it literally is 17 feet, all filtered with wetland filtration. Once again, the same process. That was a collaboration for the nation of Australia that Patrick put together. That's probably the biggest aquascape ecosystem functioning in the world. It's a public place, which is amazing. They get thousands of bathers in their the Woodford Folk Festival.
And what I think is really unique about it is they had a gentleman that he's a wastewater treatment engineer. So his entire job revolves around understanding water quality and chemistry. He started testing the lake after it was built, And he said he would love to have the results on his wastewater systems that we're achieving with our wetland filters. And he also said, which was interesting, the water quality gets better when more people are swimming in it.
Why is that?
It's it's a process known as a bioturbation. So a bioturbation is when animals are interacting with the substrates. They're interacting with the benthic zone, and they're stirring things up. So this happens naturally. Manatees, the first thing that pops into my head is a manatee swimming around. They're going to start feeding and grazing on the bottom. That's going to actually mimic the process of kids running around in a beach area. It stirs things up, and when you stir that stuff up, it opens up oxygen into those areas. It takes those fine particulates that they go up into the water column, and then all of a sudden the zooplankton start feeding on them. And if you follow that whole food chain, it goes right up through the entire ecosystem. So the more you're using it, the better everything gets, from the tiny microorganisms all the way. Actually, he just put in some incredible lungfish, Australian lungfish into that. But every animal along that food chain is going to benefit from the more people that swim in it.
It was kind of interesting that you say that, because yesterday we had about 45 kids at Aqualand swimming for 3 hours in the morning after their cross-country run. It was the Wheaton Academy cross-country team that we've been doing for 7 years now. They always kick off their season with a 10-mile run and then a dip at Aqualand. And I went there this morning and I fed the fish, and it was crystal clear. So there was 45 kids swimming in it for hours yesterday. Today the pond is crystal clear, out there.
Working nature at its finest. You gotta love it.
I'm gonna see. We've been failing at my setup so far because there's so many things to talk about. But this is. I think there's a good segue. Let's see if we can pick this one up. It says snakes in Florida.
Okay.
What's the best way to protect pondfish from them?
Snakes in Florida. I'm thinking Kennan.
Okay, so go ahead.
And we had that incredible experience when we were down in South Florida. This was insane. So we're there. We built a recreational pond for Kennan 3 years ago, 4 years ago. 3 years.
Well, we built 4 or 5 projects for him. Probably one of our top guys that we've collaborated with, Kennan Harkin of Camp Kennan. And we were down there, I think, in January, maybe.
It was January.
Yep. And so this is a kind of a funny answer to this, because it's what's the best way to protect pondfish from snakes. And I would say the best way to protect pondfish from snakes is to have a
Asian water monitor,
7-foot-long Asian water monitor that you let go walk around the perimeters of your Aquascape pond, because what happened?
It was insane. So we were swimming with Slinky. So Slinky, just the most amazing animal. We just built a new enclosure for Slinky specifically, which is actually what we were designing, I believe, when we went down there and saw this.
Yes, we were.
So we were actually down there. So we're swimming, we're snorkeling with Slinky, this 7-foot Asian water monitor. And if you've never done this before, I highly recommend it. Just incredible to see this animal doing what nature has designed him to do. So just watching him search. Then all of a sudden we're swimming, and all of a sudden Slinky starts making his way through the wetland.
And Kennan was saying he's hunting something, a frog.
So his tongue is coming out. They have that unique sensory organ, what was it, Jacobson organ on top of their mouth. So they could literally tasting the air. So he's walking around tasting the air, looking for stuff. And he was on a mission. So he's just following the perimeter. And then all of a sudden, there's this cool stump that we put in. I love putting stumps in logs. Again, it's that whole biomimicry concept. So we had this big stump, and all of a sudden, Slinky's got his head shoved under there. And Kennan's like, there's something down there. There's something under that log. And then we keep walking, and Slinky pops up, and he comes out from underneath it. And again, this is like a picture you're going to see in Indonesia somewhere, literally Southeast Asia. So Slinky comes crawling out in between my legs and Kennan's, and he keeps searching along the perimeter. And I'm like, I got to go get a picture of this, because I saw him working towards the waterfall. So I grab my camera. I go down to the negative edge area where the waterfall is, where the pumps are located, and I just start filming, and Slinky grabs a 5-foot water snake, literally grabs it by the head and starts slapping this thing all over the place. Kennan gets pissed.
Yeah, he's like wanting to save the snake.
Because Kennan is a snake guy. He wanted to save it, so he reaches in to grab the snake, which was a mistake. So Slinky turns around and smacks him with his tail.
His owner, yeah.
He's got a red mark going across his butt that I think he still has, and that was months ago. But Slinky took care of the water snake. And actually, water snakes, It's kind of a loaded question because, you know, when we build an ecosystem, the beauty of it is it's going to bring in animals. So to create a system that could sustain a water snake, I mean, to me, that's like a home run.
Yeah.
It's like we've done our job right.
It's an ecosystem. It's nature. And you
It
guide
is.
it, and it comes
It
in.
is.
Like I was just talking with Blake, and he has a cichlid pond, the second pond that we built
Yep.
for him, and he goes, the herons come, and they pluck off a cichlid here and there, but they keep breeding.
Correct.
He goes, and he lets the short-haired or short-clawed Asian
Yep, otter.
otter in there, and
Yep.
he cleans them out too because they just keep breeding. It's an
Yeah,
ecosystem.
and what I think is interesting, so I'm going to go in a different direction here than a lot of people may think. But
Yep.
so when you start, when you create these ecosystems, so a pond is a open system. So it is not just a closed ecosystem like a fish tank would be. We have a watershed, so we get heavy rains, that water is going to overflow out. We're going to have algal blooms. We're going to have stuff growing inside the pond that nature has provided for us. So there are different ways of getting rid of nutrients. One of them obviously is a biological filter. But what happens in an ecosystem, you have that food chain. So when fish start eating plankton, and they start feeding on algae inside of a pond, they're taking those nutrients that were created by nature, and it increases their biomass. So now this fish is growing off of all of the detritus. It's growing off of the stuff that nature has provided. So now when you have a heron that comes by, they're literally taking the nutrients out of the ecosystem for you.
Yep.
So they're actually helping you do your job,
Right.
especially when you have an abundance of fish. So now this heron's going to come in, he's going to take a fish or a snake, they're actually going to leave the ecosystem. So now that's a nutrient export. So it's a different way of thinking things, but again,
I've never thought of it that way.
very
Nutrient
unique.
export.
It's very unique.
You lose a
because
fish, it's a nutrient export.
It's excellent. It's healthy, and it's
Yeah.
a way to thin out the natural population. You know, hunters do this, and this is a way of managing forests. You have to remove a certain amount of deer from it. I'm not really a hunter myself, but I understand it. I could respect it because that's an important part of an ecosystem.
So it's interesting how, you know, there's so much thing to talk about, but I want to get back to, we got another question here about what's the best perennial pond plant. And I don't know if you've seen
a lot of them.
I don't know if you've seen my pictures of my pond lately with the one tropical that I have in there.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah, I just got my pond's only my new pond. I sold my big house and we downsized. Our son just left for college. But I have a 12-foot pond that's completely filled with one tropical blooming lily. But the majority of the plants at Aqualand and everything else, they're perennial.
Correct.
And when someone asks me what is the best perennial pond plant, I would say, you know, you pick your flavor. If you're talking a wetland plant, you might, you know, go with any of your rushes. You might go with your cattails. You might go with your arrowheads.
Yep.
But for ponds, you really can't beat a water lily.
No, for sure. I agree. I think that's that prototypical thing. I mean, go back to Monet's garden.
Okay,
right?
there
You
you
know,
go.
it's like that thing that everybody has a mental image in their head of what a beautiful pond is going to look like. And to me, it would be a water lily garden. You know, they're just spectacular. And Aqualand, our corporate headquarters.
Come on by in
we
St. Charles,
have
Illinois.
The back half, the south half of that pond, that pond was designed to actually mimic an Illinois watershed. The bluffs of northwestern Illinois is loaded with large bluffs and things like that, which is why we have big bluffs. We have big waterfalls. But as you move south, that's meant to mimic the southern Illinois swampland, which is loaded with water lilies. So it is just spectacular, and I love. There's nothing better than snorkeling in a pond.
Yeah, you just
where you
actually-
could
you just
actually.
did that.
I just did a video. Check
Yeah.
it out on
Yep.
YouTube. How to plant water lilies.
Yep.
But you could actually swim underneath them, and you could actually see how that plant grows, and you could see those beautiful lily pads. So it's very important for wildlife, for feeding purposes. Also helps to shade the water. I think that would probably be the best one without a doubt.
Back to influencers, and since you brought it up, I would love to hear from you guys on influencers, fish tubers, people that you think, Britney Spears on to Logan Paul, down to people that are passionate hobbyists, where you guys think that we should vlog with and we should go out and collaborate with and get them living the Aquascape lifestyle. But kind of one of the bigger guys that we got to work with just this last May for the first time ever was Coyote Peterson of Brave Wilderness fame. And the thing that Coyote and I hit it off about a couple years ago when we met was his number one animal that got him kind of following nature as a kid growing up in Ohio was snapping turtles, common snapping turtles. Yep. And so we started talking that way. And then when he had a project that for a nature center out on Lake Erie, we ended up going there, and you designed a terrific project for that one.
Yeah, South Bass Island. So an incredible nature center, Lake Erie Island Nature Center. So what I love about it was it's connecting kids with nature. So even though you're on an island, you're surrounded by Lake Erie, you have to scale it according to the kids. So, you know, a child on a lakeshore, they're going to go crazy and love it. But if you could shrink everything down and create a mini ecosystem, which is exactly what we did, we created a mini aquatic habitat right inside of the nature center for their turtle collection. And it is, it's phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to building another pond there, hopefully next year.
I think next July we're going back there for a regional Aquascape event. Look, there are so many things that we could talk all day, just keep going about this thing. But we're trying to get more people to understand working with Mother Nature, not against her, living the Aquascape lifestyle. And when you talk about the lifestyle, it's not just the water feature, it's everything around it. It's being able to have drinks. Tonight I'm going to my mom's house after this with Brett Raymer from Tanked, and we're going to sit around the pond. And there's just something to talk about this, Eddie. Negative ions.
Don't get me going here.
How much time do we have? 10 more minutes?
Next to biomimicry, that's right up there.
About 10 minutes.
So negative ions. Yes. So it's really unique when you start looking at water in general. And again, looking at across this incredible show, Aquashella, and looking at all the fish tanks and that visceral connection that we all have. What I think is really unique, water is hardwired inside of us. So water is hardwired in our DNA, and it's because every major city around the world was actually founded along a lake, river, or lake, river, or ocean.
Popular tourist places.
And it's huge popular tourist destinations. It's because everything is there. So there's an area, it's called the riparian zone. The riparian zone is where the water meets the land. It is the most biologically diverse habitat on planet Earth. So man has co-evolved in these areas because there's food, there's water, there's shelter, there's all the necessary pieces for life are going to occur there. So it is inside of us because these areas our ancestors actually grew up next to.
And now we are replicating them
in people's backyards. And there really is a weird biochemical reaction that actually happens when you get by water. I know what happens for me. If I go to the lakefront, if I go to my backyard, it's like you just want to sit back, you want to relax, you want to look in the water, and it's because there's something that's connecting us to nature there.
And that's what we do. So if you're interested in living the Aquascape lifestyle, check out Ed the Pond Professor on YouTube. Check out Greg Whitstock, the Pond Guy on YouTube. Check out Team Aquascape that does the construction. And this is why I love to say, I love my job. Good job, Eddie.
Awesome.